hot debate. Now, over the weekend, SEBI came out with two different consultation papers to address what has been a burning debate in the digital era in social media circles. And that is a debate on regulating finfluencers, basically influencers that are imparting, quote unquote, financial advice and education. There are lots of parts to it. So SEBI has released two consultation papers. One of them talks about the payments, the entire business model and the payments which an investor pays to a registered investment advisor or a research analyst. So there's one paper dealing with that. There is another paper that basically talks about whether regulated entities like mutual funds, brokers, whether they should be linking up with finfluencers at all. Yash has gone through both and he will explain them, and then we get to our set of experts, our panel. So Yash, let's start with the second paper first, the one that talks about breaking the nexus between SEBI-listed or SEBI-regulated entities and finfluencers. What's the paper saying?
Well, Surabhi, how often has it happened that you're scrolling through your Instagram reels and there is some or the other person, a finfluencer as we call them, talking about recommendations on stocks, financial services. This has been an issue for market regulator SEBI for quite some time. There have been questions to SEBI on this one for a very long time, and finally, market regulator SEBI has acted upon this particular issue. What SEBI has tried to do through its consultation paper is sort of reduce the association between a SEBI registered entity and an unregistered entity, which includes finfluencers. The objective, as SEBI states, is very simple. First thing, reducing this association between the registered and the unregistered entity like finfluencers, and second, disrupt the revenue model as far as these unregistered finfluencers are concerned. Now, how do these finfluencers earn revenue out of this particular arrangement? There are referral fees for usage of products, platform services. There are non-cash benefits like fee usage, products or services. There's compensation received from the social media platform. There's also product sharing when it comes to the product channel or services. What has SEBI said? Very clearly, 5 important points. One is that no SEBI registered entity will have association with any unregistered finfluencer. This covers all monetary and non-monetary benefits. It covers all agents, representatives of registered entity. It covers all promotions of products and services relating to the financial sector. Second, SEBI registered entities shall not share any client info with an unregistered influencer or people from that particular community. Third one, SEBI registered entities shall not pay any referral fees based on a trailing commission basis. And fourth one, this is with respect to registered finfluencers. Registered finfluencers will have to display their registration number, contact details, investor grievance helpline, all of that on their post. Final, all disclosures from these registered finfluencers will have to be displayed very clearly on all of their posts. But somewhere, the one part of the problem still remains unaddressed, which is essentially what about the finfluencers who sort of promote content for their own interest or for the interest of another unregistered entity.
Oh, absolutely. Right now, the paper is talking about just sort of the link between financial influencers as well as registered agents. But I guess that gap remains. Yash, tell us also about SEBI's paper mechanism for fee collection by SEBI registered investment advisors and research analysts. It's also more interesting because it's come, together with this earlier paper that you were talking about.
Well, that's correct. So this is another issue, a burning topic in the market which the regulators tried to address, and that is the payments to research analysts and investment advisors should be monitored by market regulator SEBI, since these payments are happening to a SEBI registered entity. There is a consultation paper which market regulator SEBI has released. Of course, investment advisors, research analysts, they charge fees to their clients depending on the investment advice or the research that they provide to them. What SEBI said is that they plan to bring a separate mechanism for fee collection by these investment advisors and research analysts. And there's a very crucial quote from market regulator SEBI in this consultation paper, which sort of outlines the body for what SEBI wants to do. SEBI says all fee payments made by client for investment advisory and research services provided by the investment advisor or research analyst shall necessarily be through SEBI specified platform. Also, any payment made outside the SEBI specified mechanism shall not be considered as payment towards investment advisory and research services, and there won't be any sort of grievance management done by market regulator SEBI if the payment is made outside this particular mechanism.
Got it. Got it. Yash, Yash, we've got the gist of it. And some of the issues that you raised, we want to take them up with our guests as well. Kind of just wrap it up in a nutshell for our viewers. Two aspects. First of all, SEBI is saying that only registered investment advisors can be giving out advice to clients, and these advisors need to start collecting payment through a closed system, which SEBI is going to monitor. This is a proposal right now. This is a consultation paper, but that essentially is what SEBI is saying. We've got that. Thank you very much. Let's broaden this out to our guests. And as I do that, let's pull up a quote that kind of sums up the thought process of the regulator. I'm speaking from the discussion paper that we have here with us. And SEBI says, and I quote, "Influencers not registered with the relevant financial sector regulator may not have the requisite qualification or expertise on the subject. Worse, not being formally subject to financial sector code of conduct, they may not disclose any potential conflict of interest, such as their association with or interest in the products, services, or securities that they promote." And if you're going to get money to put out a post, and if you don't say that it's a paid promotion, and there's a problem. That's a short point that SEBI is making. Well, we have our entire panel of experts to take this forward. Sandeep, Parekh, founder of Finsec Law Advisors, Radhika Gupta, MD and CEO of Edelweiss Asset Management, and Mohit, CEO of Moneyfront. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in. This is a burning issue, and I think all of you will agree that this was always coming. The consultation paper is out. Sandeep, your first thoughts. Does it sound reasonable? Does it sound too onerous? Because the Finfluencers say, and I was talking to some of them yesterday, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
So I think, when I read the paper, I think it does actually, it segments influencers into two buckets, really. And I think it does the exact opposite of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, which is it throws out only a little bit of the bathwater. And I'll explain that. Broadly, this divides influencers into registered people and unregistered influencers. And I think that's mainly coming from the fact that SEBI, I don't think they want to start regulating lakhs of so-called influencers. So they've said that once you come within our umbrella, you need to make relevant disclosures, you need to have some investor grievance mechanism, etc., and you need to publicize that. And then you can say that you registered with SEBI. As opposed to that, my guess is 99% of the people are not going to fall within the registration, because obviously they don't want to fall within the scrutiny of the regulator, which is why, the whole problem has really cropped up in the last 2 years of giving kind of all kinds of random advice. And more than random advice, I think a lot of it is just conflicted. They're getting paid from A party or B party without a disclosure. So I'm not sure the problem is going to go away, but I do think SEBI is kind of going to regulate it in a thoughtful manner, which it is capable of doing, instead of trying to regulate lakhs of people.
Okay, let's bring in Radhika into the chat as well. Radhika, there's two parts to it, right? One, I think most agree that there is need to regulate this universe. I mean, you need to pass all kinds of exams to even teach a young child ABCD if you want to become a teacher. But how is it that there's no regulation or no oversight when you're teaching complex derivative trading strategies and whatnot, when we know what's happening on YouTube, right? So how does one strike a balance? And are you in agreement with the step that's being proposed as a first step? The industry needs to de-link itself completely with whoever is not willing to get registered.
Yes, I'm in agreement. I think if you look at part one of your question, there are really two problems out here. One is the lack of qualification of people giving financial advice. To your point, if I want to, educate a child today, I have to have a certain amount of qualifications. Now, finance is serious business. If I have to be an MFD, if I have to be an RIA, there is a certain set of exams that I need to pass. So everyone else who is in the business of financial advice is held to a certain standard. And I think it's important to be held to a standard. The second issue, which in my view is a bigger issue, is one of conflict of interest that Sandeep already raised, which the paper addresses. Because again, if you are an MFD or an RIA today, similar, you're in the business of selling financial products or giving financial advice, there are so many disclosures, audits, due diligence, etc., that you need to go through that disclose why you're getting a certain amount of commission or fees for doing what you're doing. Why should you not be subject to that if you are earning money as an influencer? And we know the referral programs and all the stuff that has gone out there. And unfortunately, some of the poor consequences, particularly, products that were a little questionable, have been referred for not clean incentives. is SEBI doing the right thing? I think they are, and I think they're doing it in the best way they can. You can't go out and regulate lakhs of people. You can't attack freedom of speech. But the best thing that you can do is take your registered intermediaries, whether it's mutual funds, brokers, or anyone else, and say, hey, you guys are regulated. You should have nothing to do with this. And I think that's exactly what they're going ahead and doing. And if any influencer still wants to continue doing what they can do, be subject to a certain amount of regulation. So I think it's an absolutely right step.
Okay, got that. Sandeep, coming back to you, on this, it is sort of a balancing act, right? Because I mean, of course, you cannot go out and put a complete ban on someone saying anything that they want to over here. But also, I mean, all of these financial influencers are not about to go and get registered right now. How do you draw that act? Do you think what SEBI has done right now is as close that you can get? Do you think there's more that can be done while still sort of maintaining a little bit of a balance here?
So I think SEBI is kind of, it's kind of win a battle, which is, by limiting the battle really instead of going after lakhs of people. So really, I think it's doing the right thing. I think the other side also has to be addressed, which is investor education, which can be done in two manners. One is, of course, people listen to people, smart people. We have people like Monica Halan who trying to educate investors. We have lots of investor education initiatives with the exchanges. Or people start losing money. Hopefully not enough to lose their house. But I think those are the two ways to kind of make sure that people don't listen to the snake oil townsmen that they've been listening to. So I think, you beyond a point, the regulator's job is to remove ignorance from the market and not stupidity. So if somebody wants to throw the money in the ocean, there's only so much a regulator can do. So I think SEBI's approach, I think it makes a lot of sense without kind of trying to address a problem which is too large for it to really directly regulate.
Okay, so two of our panelists agree that the approach is right and regulation is required. I don't think anyone can doubt or debate that. The question is, what format should it take? And some of the Finfluencers that we've been speaking to, at least some of the ones that I spoke to, they say that RIA regulations are simply too stringent. They'll completely kill the industry. Is that a valid argument or not? We will ask someone who does have that registration, Mohit Gang, and he's been, of course, a part of the financial education initiatives for many, many years. So we take that break, come back, the discussion continues, and we'll get Mohit's take as well. The hot debate is still on. Regulating Finfluencers in India is the latest consultation paper from SEBI. Is it the right way to go? Mohit Gang has been patiently waiting by, so let's bring him in as well. Mohit, so the issue is, what is the best way to register? Now, if SEBI says that any Finfluencer who wants to, educate, who wants to also maybe work in tandem with a mutual fund like Radhika's, they need to go and register. If RIA is the way to register, is it fair? Because a lot of the Finfluencer chaps say that it's too onerous. They say it will completely kill our creativity. Your thoughts?
Surabhi, thanks a lot. Look, to be very honest, I will rather choose a middle path out here. I'm neither on that side nor on this side, but I'll try and put forth my views on this. Look, in India today, we have 114 odd crore mobile users and we have 40 crore social media users, right? And how many stock investors do we have in the country? 8 crore to 10 crore, and mutual fund unique investors, 3.5 crores. Now, if you and I, or even Radhika with all her branch networks and might of being an AMC, would want to take the mutual fund industry to a 40 crore user base, can we do that? Look, the simple answer to this entire thing is we can't, right? And that's where the Finfluencer as a category in the ecosystem has been extremely prominent to getting new users to come to adopt financial products. Now, the merit of it and the right and wrong of it, we can debate. What is the right way of doing it? Whether they register as an RIA regulations. Look, being an RIA for last 7 years, myself as a corporate entity, I can tell you the regulations are extremely onerous. RIA as a bunch of fraternity is a dying fraternity. The number of RIAs and RAs put together in this country might be around 1,000 odd, maybe to my best estimate, and that's also dwindling like a dodo. Right. So it's extremely onerous. The regulator out here needs to find a middle way. Can the Finfluencers be registered with MFI as a different category? Can they provide incidental advice and not a proper advice? Can they still go out and detail and debate around merits of doing an SIP, merits of investing in mutual funds? Yes, they should be allowed to do that, right? They should not be allowed to recommend schemes, to show derivative strategies and to give trading calls and to give stock calls and all. I'm totally for it. You regulate that, you tell them you're not allowed to do XYZ, but to educate investors to invest in financial products, I think that's something which we need them as a community to, right? And if you really want to take this culture forward of financial savings, I think regulator will have to expand the circular. You can't limit it in 2 pages and say that if you're unregistered, you are of no use, you better register as an RIA or RA. RIA is extremely onerous regulations, right? So you have to give them a middle way. Even MFTs in this country are allowed to give incidental advice. It's a different reason, different thing altogether, that on the ground they completely will go overboard and give all kinds of advice, but they're also allowed to give incidental advice. So why not allow RIAs certain latitude and give them few do's and don'ts, which are very clear, that you can do this, you can educate, but you can't give trading calls or you can't give whatever XYZ. So that's my take on that.
Sandeep, comment on this point, right? What falls under the realm of investor education? It's quite clear, and there is a unanimous opinion that SEBI wants to clamp down, and rightfully, on anything that falls as investment advisory. Buy a stock, do a straddle on a Nifty bank. That's a complete no-no, right? But again, this investor education, there are so many masterclasses which are taking place on how do you read a balance sheet, to understand derivatives. There are so many multiple YouTube videos on whenever there is a new IPO, there are hundreds of these influencers talking about what the company does. They've read all those 400, 500 paid RHP and they're explaining it to viewers. So that comes in the classic investor education, which Mohit was also talking about. What is the SEBI stance on that based on what you've picked up?
No, so first of all, I don't think anybody really provides education because, it's simply not profitable to go on YouTube unless you literally get millions of views. So everybody has some kind of conflict of interest built in. Somebody's peddling an IPO gets paid by the promoter. Somebody who's kind of selling options trading wants to kind of route trades to their broker, which of course legal, but SEBI wants to restrict that. So I think there are all kinds of incentives at play, and almost none of it is coming from YouTube ad revenue. So I think the idea is to not allow, you don't go to a surgeon and say, okay, anybody with a knife can come and operate on me. You need some standards, and financial advice is extremely dangerous. You can literally, the people who've lost their homes trying to bet on option strategies based on these educational courses. So I don't think it should be left alone. But at the same time, as I said, a regulator can only do so much. Most of it will have to come from investor education, whether it's by burning the fingers or by actually educating them.
No, I completely understand what you're saying, and I completely get that, Sandeep, because these master classes on options trading strategies, and I keep going back to that point that even to become a kindergarten teacher, you have so much regulation. So how do we deal with this? And Radhika, that's the issue. You can tell mutual funds or stockbrokers not to associate with unregistered finfluencers, but what are you going to do about these master classes? Because a lot of the finfluencers are saying that we are not dealing with clients, we are not registering clients. Why should we become an RIA? It's an education initiative between us and whoever's choosing to pay for this master class. How will SEBI wrap its hands around that?
See, that is a much trickier territory to handle. So you can say you disassociated people like mutual funds and brokers from influencers. Great. You said people who want to get registered will get registered. Now, registration gives you the benefit of being able to earn an income by working with market registered intermediaries. But can I still operate in the zone of gray? I can absolutely operate in the zone of gray today. It prevents me from access to it, clips my wings in some way, but it doesn't prevent me from offering master classes or doing whatever it is. I think the thing that needs to be done there, and I'm also empathetic to what Mohit said, Surbi, for a second, is that social media does have power. And one of the things that this group does very well is create content and make often very boring finance content about selling SIPs, very interesting and palatable to a new generation of viewers. So, don't take away from that they do. But I think some awareness also about using the right forms of financial advice. The market and the investors also need awareness that when you go to a doctor, you take financial advice, but I don't take cricketing advice from a doctor, right? So some awareness about who you need to take financial advice from and who you shouldn't and why you shouldn't be attending these options master classes, that also needs to be done.
Yeah. Radhika, just one final question. You were talking about how a minimum standard is required for any of these finfluencers. Do you think putting parts of, things, just completely cancelling them, saying, for example, you cannot allow advice on derivatives, which is places where, people make more losses. Do you think that is one way to go about it? To say that, okay, leave the derivatives out of it. Maybe advising on, say, starting an SIP, starting a mutual fund is a good idea. And of course, no one's, taking away the fact that influencers have really forwarded and put forward the importance of, investing. But do you think parts of it should completely be left out just because of the kind of losses one can suffer in these segments?
Yeah, one suggestion is to make a carve out of the RIA regulations for this category of people so that it is not so onerous and say this is what you can do and this is what you cannot do. And what you cannot do is, recommend schemes, get incentives for financial products, especially unregulated financial products like crypto, give advice on derivatives because that is complicated. There are a whole host, give stock tips because that requires a certain set. So say that these people need a certain amount of education. There's a certain set of exams that they need to pass. And this is the charter that they have. This is what they can speak about and this is what they cannot speak about. And maybe if you make that a subset of one of the existing regulations, then they have some area to operate.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, all three of you. We're out of time, but clearly this is a debate that will go on. This is only a consultation paper. 15th of September is the last date by which people can submit their comments. Let's see what comes out. We live in very, very interesting digital times. Thank you very much to all three of you for joining in today. Quick break on that note. More on the markets in just a bit.